Hello, and thank you so much for tuning into my podcast. My name is Kara, and I'm a holistic health practitioner for both people and pets. After working for years in the conventional medicine field, I realized that while our lifespans may be getting longer, our health spans are rapidly shrinking. And when it comes to our pets, both their length and quality of life are decreasing. When I turned to functional medicine and a more holistic approach to health, I saw dramatic improvements for my pets, myself, and my patients. Join me each week as I merge natural health for people and pets by focusing on the root cause of disease and applying raw, real remedies that you can use to improve overall wellness for every member of your family, including the furry ones. Well, hello. Welcome to this week's episode. Today, my fantastic guest is Dr. Carol Smeja-Gailen, who you may know as the mastermind behind the Mind Pet Platter. Dr. Carol holds a PhD in psychology and sociology, which she has applied to studying both human and animal eating behaviors. Driven by her deep passion for animals and inspired by her dog Pip, she began a 5-year journey to understand and pioneer the science of feeding pets, highlighting that how you feed your pet is just as important as what you feed them. The Pet Platter is also a legacy of love. Shortly after the Pet Platter was introduced, Carol's husband Bob unexpectedly passed away, followed by Pip. She continues this journey in honor of her husband's lifelong commitment to pets and to Pip, who brought their lives so much joy. In addition to creating the Mind Pet Platter, Carol has worked with both U.S. and global food companies through research and marketing initiatives to improve public health and nutrition. This amazing conversation ties together pet and pet parent eating habits and behaviors and shines a light on the importance of being honest about what we eat and how it affects our entire family. I hope you'll find it as enlightening as I did, so let's get to it. All right, everybody, and we are back with Dr. Carol Smeja. Thank you so much for coming on today. I am so excited for our conversation. We've been kind of chatting, emailing back and forth about this for a couple of weeks now, and I feel like this is going to blow people's minds. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your workday to come on and chat with us today.
Thanks so much, Kara. I am so excited to be with you, and the fact that you're a nurse and you're into all of this, I'm just excited to talk with you, and hopefully we can provide lots of good information today.
Yeah, this is definitely a topic near and dear to my heart. Nutrition has been something that I've been focusing on for several years now, and I'm actually really excited to say, I don't think I've even told anybody this yet, but I did officially accept a job offer a couple of days ago. I'm moving back home to New York, as people may know, because I've talked about it a lot. Yes, thank you. I'm very excited to get into the practice that I'm going to be with and be able to really institute a lot of the functional practices that I've been learning about and applying to animals for so long, but have never really had the chance to apply to my people patient population because I just haven't been in the right setting for it. So Very excited for this next chapter, and I'm excited to maybe bring what we talk about here to my patients, because Lord knows nutrition is a big topic that is seriously under discussed, I think.
Absolutely. It plays such a critical role, and yet there really isn't a lot of information out there on how we can improve nutrition. I'm so happy that you're going to be conquering that.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So let's dive in, and I want to say, I actually, it's crazy, I didn't even know this side of you, although I think it is on your bio and on your website, but I think most people know you from being the mastermind behind the Mind Pet Platter, right? And I have a couple of them. If you're watching and you can see, they're behind me. If you're just listening, we'll go into detail and describe them a little bit later. But the whole fact that you created this, I feel, was really sparked not just by your own beloved dog and the behaviors that you observed, but also your background in psychology. So can you tell us briefly about how those came together to inspire the idea?
It's an interesting journey. Everybody it's funny in life. You think you're going to follow a specific path, and then as the years go on, the journey just sort of takes a different path, and you just sort of run with it and see where you end up. But I started in psychology and had my own practice and realized that that really wasn't the right thing for me. I was a little bit too empathetic and felt like I needed to be doing something else. So what I basically did was to say, understand how people think, what drives behavior, what motivates them, what can I do with that? So I actually went into marketing, advertising, and communications platforms to help people understand what drives food decisions. And it's interesting. I did a lot of predictive modeling when I was in psychology, determining what factors are most important in determining certain behaviors. And so I took that knowledge base and started studying what impacts people's food choices and their dietary decisions. And I took an interesting journey. I was able to work with global food companies. I've worked with Kraft, General Foods, Quaker, Fruits and Vegetables Association. I worked with all of these organizations that wanted to understand what drives people to make certain food decisions. And I even took that knowledge and worked with the USDA and the CDC and the National Cancer Institute because they were also striving to improve dietary habits, but they needed more information. And so the thing that I'm really proud about is I was able to develop the first database that linked people's attitudes, nutritional attitudes, with their actual behavior in eating, their actual dietary intake. And we were the first ones that accomplished that, and it was a massive undertaking. But this data is still going on today and being used to help understand these food choice decisions.
I'm so curious what mine would be. Because I feel like I have a little bit of I think, an addictive personality when it comes to food. And it's really hard when you find something that you like to say no. It almost feels like you develop a pattern or a habit before you even recognize that it happened. And then once you recognize it, it's really hard to pull back.
You know what? Most of food decisions is a mind battle. It's heavily driven by a psychological focus that we all have. It's not to say biology doesn't play into it. It is synergistic. But psychology drives a lot of how we approach the food world. And so we're always struggling with those decisions. It's sort of a love-hate relationship that a lot of people have with food. It brings you great joy, and yet it can bring you a lot of sorrow at the same time.
Sorrow and suffering, yeah. Yeah, if you do it wrong, it's going to lead to a lot of issues down the line, and that is tough.
Exactly.
That is tough. So when it comes to food, so we're talking about how there's so many different aspects that go into what you're eating, why you're eating it. So, textures, flavors, habits, but also like socialization, right? I mean, people are social creatures. Animals are social creatures too. Can you go a little bit deeper into the psychological aspects of eating and how it affects us? As my cat continuously bats the camera with his tail. I'm very sorry, people. You keep getting an eye full of tail because my cat thinks it's time for food. And we're talking about food. He thinks it's time for food.
Well, it's really interesting. A lot of the literature shows you that the foods that you're initially brought up on is the food pattern you continue on in life. And it becomes habitual. We start to develop cravings, preferences based on that. That's why there's such an emphasis on developing healthy eating habits early on in life, because you're more likely to track those later on in life as well. But there's also a big component that emotion drives a lot of our food decisions as well, and emotional eating specifically. And stress eating is one of the problems that we've seen a lot developing lately, that when people guilty, we all are. I'm in there with you. But it's really interesting because it's sort of like people crave certain types of high-fat foods or foods that have a texture or sound. In fact, working with food companies, you learn that mouthfeel of foods is a very important element for satisfaction. So food companies look at colors, they look at food texture, all of those things come into play because it's our psychology of basically how we perceive them. But starting to rely on stress eating, you'll find that during stressful moments of your life, you will go to the high-fat foods, you will go to the salty foods, you will go to the crunchy foods. Crunch plays a major, major factor. When you think about salty snacks, there's a satisfaction when you hear that noise and how it feels as you're chewing it to reinforce you going back to that. So the profile of foods becomes very important, which is why food companies also look at that. In terms of stress eating, it is probably something that most people suffer. They have their go-to food. Some people will be ice cream driven, others will be salty snack driven. Based on our own biology and what's going to satiate us, to make us feel better and to make us feel full. That's really what we're looking for. And that's oftentimes why vegetables don't play a role in that.
They have the crunch, but they don't have anything else. Yeah, I think a lot of that is true of animals too. When we talk about how it's kind of a learned behavior for people, especially for kitties, that imprint eating that we always talk about. Goose, the one who keeps batting the camera, who's sitting next to me, he was really tough to get onto a raw diet and even cooked because he, I think, was really addicted to that crunch of a dry. And being the oldest, when I tried to transition them, it was really hard to get him away from that. And for a long time, I had to mix freeze-dried food in with the raw or cooked so that I think he was getting like that satisfying mouthfeel of the texture. And eventually, thankfully, we were able to transition to fully fresh. Not that freeze-dried isn't fresh, but, you know, I don't want them to have dry food all the time. It's not good, it's dehydrating. But now we use that as treats, right? So freeze-dried are treats, and then the wet stuff is the main dinner. But it took a long time for him. And I agree. I think that with people, we develop those habits, and we have what satisfies us, and that's kind of our go-to and what we reach for. And it's hard to break out of that.
Well, and the other interesting thing, the difference between us and dogs and cats is we have 9,000 taste buds. So taste is a primary driver in terms of what we're searching for. Dogs only have 1,700 taste buds and cats only have 390. How they taste their food is through their sense of smell. So that goes into how you're feeding your pet. If you're putting it in a container where they can't interact with that, they can't taste the food, which leads to gulping behavior. So one of the important things we need to do as pet parents is to realize how our pets actually taste their food. Otherwise, they're not going to get that taste satisfaction.
He just knows we're talking about food and he wants it. I think also, you know what it is, Carol? He sees the platter next to me and he knows that's what he eats off of. I brought it in so that I could hold it up for people, which I guess now is a good time, right? So if anybody is watching, and we're going to talk more about the platter later, but this is what Goose eats off of, and I think he just knows it's in the room with us and he wants to eat something. So since we're already talking about it, why don't we chat a little bit about the Mind Pet Platter before we get a little deeper into kind of more nutrition for people and your nutritional schizophrenia, which I really, really want to talk about. So in terms of pets, psychological needs surrounding food. So you already talked about how the scent driven is so important to them and why they gulp if their face is, you know, shoved into a deep hole when they're eating like your traditional bowl. So talk about this amazing platter, which definitely changed the way my cats eat for sure.
That's great. The whole thing about it, when you go back in history and look, the ancestors of our dogs and cats were carcass eaters. They spent 95% of their time hunting in the wild, foraging, constructing, all of those activities. So as the domestication of our pets came along, all of a sudden, they're feeding from a bowl. That represents a whole new set of challenges because our dog and cat's sensory circuit, much like their ancestors, this sensory circuit is so powerful and has helped protect their food resource in the wild. That is still operating with our dogs and cats. We like to say how we've domesticated them. In reality, those traits can kick in at any time. There's an example of Valerie, a little wiener type dog, who at under a year old got out of her sort of cage setting on a camping trip on Kangaroo Island off the southern coast of Australia. She survived a whole year in the wild and was perfectly okay. And
wow,
there are so many stories, but when you think of this dog, and there were venomous snakes, there were eagles, there were all these wild animals, how she survived it, nobody knows. But they think she survived on primarily roadkill and dam water. She knew how to survive in the wild. So even though she was domesticated, these instincts just kicked in. So the pet platter is designed to basically calm all of the instincts. So when you're feeding from a bowl, they're putting their head into a dark, which blocks their peripheral vision. And that darkness, especially if you serve kibble or something that moves, they have superior night vision because they have more rods than cones in their retina, and it creates a sense of fear. And then if you feed in the kitchen corner, it adds another layer of peripheral blocking. Feeding your pet in the kitchen corner is the most dangerous place for them to eat, because they can't see if somebody's coming up around them, and their sense of hearing, they can hear over a mile away and hear at much higher frequencies than we do. So they're hearing all these noises in the background, their peripheral vision is blocked, and it creates a heightened anxiety, which increases cortisol in their system because they're stressed. So the pet platter basically calms all that down. And the size of the pet platter, we have two different ones. One is for smaller dogs, one is for larger dogs. You spread the food all over the surface. In the wild, when they were pulling food from the bones and eating the muscle and things like that, it took time. The fact that we can't duplicate that, we need to give them a feeding territory where we can spread it out. This way, it naturally slows the amount as well as the pace eaten. So that improves digestion. And one of the key things that I think is so important for people to know is that dogs have the fastest digestive tract of any living mammal. And if that food is coming in big chunks too fast, you're not getting the nutrient absorption. So you're spending all this great money on food and the pet isn't getting any of the nutrient benefit.
I will say that in my own house, when I feed my dogs from a flat surface, I don't use the Mind Pet Platter for them simply because of ease of meal prep for us right now. But that's going to be changing when we move, Carol, because I think that I'm going to start doing the grinder life. But we'll see, we're not there yet. But for the cats, they always eat off a flat surface. But when I do feed the dogs off of a flat surface, I notice they eat slower.
Yes.
And I can tell that they're not, I have a gulper. Golden retriever, a gulper retriever. But then I also have a dog who has a bit of resource guarding. She's a rescue. We don't know where she came from. We don't know her history. And she has always practically inhaled her food.
Right.
When she has it spread out, she takes her time and she doesn't feel like she needs to just kind of inhale it down. And I think that comes from being able to see what's around her, not having her senses overwhelmed by shoving it into a small area that is crowded with food scents. So even in my own home, I mean, with my dogs, I've seen the improvement. And then the cats, of course, they eat off this every day now, twice a day.
Yeah.
And no more puking for us. I used to have a cat that would barf up, whole pieces of kibble back when they were kibble fed, because of course we know that animals don't really chew their food.
Yeah.
They just crunch it into a shape appropriate for swallowing, and now no more of that, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely beneficial, and it's helping them kind of give back their natural, biologically appropriate ways of consuming food.
Yeah.
And we want to do that as much as possible.
Dr. Judy Morgan was actually the one who coined the term species appropriate feeding, because
I love that.
The pet platter actually resembles carcass feeding, and the size and shape of the pet platter is designed to give them psychologically complete control over their feeding environment. So
Excellent.
what your dogs are experiencing also is they have control over their territory. And that's why we have the 3 different colors. Dogs have a different color spectrum than we do. And the colors they're first served on is the color that they adopt as their own personal feeding territory. So they can see that color, but more importantly, they can differentiate it from the other colors.
Yeah.
So it reduces food guarding and food stealing, because now they recognize this is my pet platter and that's yours.
This is mine. Mine pet platter.
Exactly.
I love it so much.
People always ask, why do you call it the Mine Pet Platter? And it's because it's their feeding territory.
Mine. Oh, that's great. So let's talk a little bit more about the specifications of the platter, because I will be the first to admit that I was very wrong. And when I first reached out to you, I was like, oh, can you tell me what kind of plastic this is made out of? And it is not. So it comes in different colors, and that is not the material that it's in. I would love for you to tell us more about what it's made out of and why that's so important to you.
You know, it's really interesting. We spent a year looking for a material that we felt comfortable with and that was durable and safe for pets. And it was a journey that took over a year to really do. And what we ended up with was a cellulose fiber composite. Why did we use cellulose fiber? It's a warmer material. It comes from tree pulp, and it's a natural, organic occurring molecule that all of us experience each and every day. And the processing of this cellulose fiber is so important. We actually use a grade of it that is similar to what the pharmaceutical industry uses. People may not realize it, but there are variations of it that people actually consume when they swallow pills. And it's also used in cheese and yogurt, so it's actually edible. But importantly, we do third-party test, independent lab testing. It's food safe, non-toxic, non-porous, and it is very durable. I always tell this story when we first started this, and a gentleman came up and said, how durable is this thing? And my late husband said, well, you could throw it out the window and let it fall on the concrete and nothing would happen. And the guy walked to the window and threw it out. We're like, oh my God, we're going to get sued. Did anybody get hit, right? And of course the platter didn't break. Yeah. So it's really designed for that. And it's sort of like when you're thinking of stainless steel. Stainless steel isn't a single metal. It's made of things like chromium, iron ore, magnesium, all those sorts of things combined. But here's the one thing that I want to share with people. We hired this material engineer to actually educate us on this. And what we found is that sourcing is so very important. And we have one engineer that we knew who actually got stainless steel bowls from all over China, different resources, and brought them in. I think he had about 60 of them. And he did radioactive testing and found that close to 2/3 of them were radioactive, because if industrial waste, stainless steel waste is used, that can become a part of it. So we only source all of our materials in the USA, and we manufacture in the USA, in Wisconsin. And so when people say, well, why do you have a higher price? It's because you can be sure there's nothing mixed in with it. It is completely safe. And, it's something we've always been committed to. The other thing I can share with you, I know that some people say that, I get my bowl from, for example, India. You have to still be very careful because a lot of the stainless steel coming into India is coming from China. So I'm not implicating a specific country or specific brand or anything. I'm just saying consumers need to be aware of that. And, sourcing is probably one of the things that everybody overlooks. It's sort of like...
And it's the most important thing.
Yeah, because
honestly,
you have consumer waste, you have industrial waste, so any type of material can be recycled and you wouldn't even know about it. So that's why, we made the decision, we're manufacturing in the USA and we're only using USA source material. So it's just a core part of who we are.
Yeah. I do think, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, it's important for me that something is made or sourced in the USA for a couple of reasons. The first is it's nice to support American-made things because so many things are outsourced now. And the second is how clean is the area that you're getting it from? And I mean, obviously, probably most people know that China is one of the manufacturing capitals of the world. But when it comes to industrialism, that does cause a lot of environmental contamination. We know that. It stinks. And so you want to be careful where you're getting things from because you don't want to get something that's contaminated. And so this is something like, for example, I had no idea that so much of the steel that goes to India comes from China. And how would you know that unless you go deep into the rabbit hole, right? No one can know everything about everything. So I'm glad that you brought that to our attention because it gave me something to look into, even sourcing, like your pots and pans and where you're getting things from that you're cooking on. Exactly. You don't want to be contaminating yourself. So that's really good info to know. And I would urge anybody who is buying something from another country, just see if there's third-party testing, see if, where it's coming from and just be cognizant. That's all. All you can do is advocate for yourself. So just ask questions, never be afraid.
You know what? It's all about education, which is why we like to do these podcasts. And even when people contact our info center, we're there to help with all feeding issues. Even if you don't have our platter, our goal is just to share our education and make pets' lives better. That's what we're here for.
Now, you mentioned that dogs, the first color that they're fed off of, they tend to see that as theirs. Is the same true for cats?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They have a similar color spectrum, although they do a little bit better in a pastel. Their colors are a little more diluted than it is for dogs, but they can differentiate.
Because I noticed you have different colors for the cats.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And part of that is just variation. And you'll be seeing, we're going to be coming out with special colors as well. We've gotten so many requests for that, but we have to make sure it fits into the color spectrum so they can still see and differentiate between it.
Yeah. That's exciting.
We'll let you know.
I ended up getting the small dog platter for my cats because my cats are such messy eaters. They love to pick up a piece of food in their mouth, step back and then chew, and then pieces will fall down. So when I chose the small dog platter, which is larger than the cat platter because they're all just messy and they love for me to clean up after them.
Yeah.
So they have dog colors, but I am excited that you're coming out with kitty colors.
Oh, yeah. Another important element is, and this sort of correlates with human behavior, if you allow your puppies or kittens to eat out of bowls, they will develop that gulping behavior. Okay? So we recommend using the pet platter because they'll learn to explore their food, make their own food choices, which is stimulating for their brains. And if you never develop gulping behavior early on, you're not going to have the problem later in life. So it's a socialization thing, and that's why breeders use us as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. So, all right, pulling us back. I want to talk a little bit more about eating habits for people because this is a podcast for people and pets. Although mostly it ends up being for pets, for the animals. But I do like to talk about people too, because I think that what we do as pet parents and the habits that we develop can influence our pets. So you brought up to me this idea of nutritional schizophrenia, and I'm really excited to unpack that and talk about it.
That is one of the great things that we learned after looking at our database, what consumer attitudes towards nutrition were, and then what they actually did, matching it
Mm-hmm.
up. And time again, we saw what people say they're eating or how they feel about eating never really matches up to what they're actually eating in real life. And that was a major insight to everybody. And when you think about our own pets, we find that people can do the same thing with their pets as well. So you sort of think you're doing the right thing, but you're actually not. So, for example, I was actually able to come across a survey of pet parents, 1,000 pet parents, that looked at their attitudes and reported behaviors. And it was really interesting. We actually saw that there were examples of nutritional schizophrenia. 97% of the pet parents actually acknowledged that diet was important to their dog's longevity and that it was an
Yeah.
important element. Only 53% reported the activity of regularly feeding their dog a healthy diet. A major, major discrepancy. And they even put spending time with family above healthy food choices. Another thing about it is 83% of pet parents said they were confident about the content of their dog's food. Interestingly, 75% fed their dogs processed food. Only 12% served fresh foods, and only 58% could name the top 3 ingredients. So you have this notion of pet parents knowing it's important and wanting to do the right thing, and yet in actual dietary practice, it's not happening.
Yeah.
It spans humans to pets as well. And why do we have nutritional schizophrenia? It's sort of interesting. Because of this mind battle that's going on, we often resort to rationalization. And that is based on our cravings and what our immediate food needs are. So, for example, one is just self-deception, where people literally will claim, I am on a low-fat diet. Everything I do in my diet is low-fat. And then you look at their dietary habit, and they have an inordinate level of fat content that they're ingesting. So one is just saying, this is something I have a sincere desire to do, but in actuality, that just isn't taking practice. Another thing is the exception to the rule. Well, it's my birthday. So on this special day, and I'm going to be going out soon, so I might as well do this.
Yeah.
That's another principle. And then just justification. I've had a really bad day.
Ugh.
I just broke up with my boyfriend. I'm really feeling down today. And, a lot of stress eating, and this isn't to be critical because we all go through this. I mean, if I could share with you so many of the studies that I did, which shows people are battling all the time. They're trying hard to make the right decisions because we know it's important for our health and longevity. But it's struggling to get there. And so psychology is that mediating role. But I think the important thing is to take small steps. Don't beat up on yourself. If you make a mistake, say that's okay and go back. And tomorrow's another day to conquer it. But, cravings, there's a biology to it. The mouthfeel, how it tastes, how satisfying, how satiated you feel. All of those factors play such a critical role. So in some ways, you don't have control over it. You know, there's other information being fed into you. The notion is to become more cognizant and to try to back away from those exceptions or that justification and say, you know what, I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm going to go have celery, you know?
Yeah.
Which I always keep celery in my refrigerator for myself.
Crunchy water. It's just crunchy water.
It's crunchy water, exactly. So I think it's a really important part. So just recognizing nutritional schizophrenia goes across the board. Everybody experiences it. That's why you can see a vegetarian eating a burger, okay? A big old hamburger from time to time, or the low-fat diet and then going to eat a bag of potato chips. Those sorts of dichotomies that you see in your diet.
To share too, because I think whenever you talk about struggles you personally have overcome or are still trying to overcome, it makes you more human and a little bit more relatable. And so I have struggled with eating a healthy diet for a long time. And sometimes I feel uncomfortable talking about it because if you were to look at me, I'm petite. I'm a good weight for my height. And anybody would think like, oh, she's skinny. What could she possibly have to complain about or struggle with?
Right.
But I've had some health struggles for the last year. And when I finally decided to stop ignoring it and do some blood work, I found that despite being petite, I'm very metabolically unhealthy right now. I have a high ApoB. My LDL particle size is very small. That's bad. My omega-3 to omega-6 ratio was poor. My vitamin D level was disgustingly low. And I have started to develop some thyroid autoantibodies. And so I am hurtling toward an autoimmune disease. And where is that coming from? Two factors: diet and shouldn't have put that one down first. Diet and lifestyle, right? So nutrition, my nutrition could be better. Although I eat a good, healthy dinner for the most part. We like to make fish. We like to get our air-chilled, pastured chicken, grass-fed beef. Love my vegetables. I love some asparagus with a little bit of olive oil baked in the oven. Delicious, right? All of those things, very healthy dinners. But then I go to work and I work all night long. And what do? I snack. And they give us healthy looking snacks, but if you flip over the package, they're not. For example, almonds or cashews or peanuts. Like peanuts are terrible, but they'll give us packages of nuts at work.
Yeah.
And you think it's just nuts. It's got to be healthy fats. You flip it over, well, they're roasted in vegetable oil or peanut oil or a terribly high omega-6 pro-inflammatory oil, which turned a potentially healthy snack into a terrible one.
Right.
And I would snack all night, and then I would make excuses. Well, I'm eating a healthy dinner, it's fine. Or it's that time of the month and I'm having some mood swings, I think I'll get ice cream. And then you have a little self-serve ice cream 3 nights out of that week, right? And it's really easy to delude yourself into thinking, well, my main meal of the day is healthy, so it's okay if I snack every once in a while. Well, if every once in a while is 4 or 5 nights a week, that's not every once in a while. That's your daily dietary habit. And so that really spurred me into action and made me realize I need to be stricter, but more than anything, I need to be honest with myself. Yeah. And if I can't be honest about when I cheat and I eat the naughty foods, the delicious foods, the one that makes my brain happy because I fed it, I increased all of my happy hormones by feeding it what it's addicted to, I'll never be metabolically healthy and I'll be petite with diabetes. So, it's very real and everybody deals with some form of this.
Yeah.
At least I think in America because we're exposed to so many crappy foods.
I think that's true. And what we used to do is to say, if you cannot pronounce what's on a label, don't eat it. Okay.
Yep. Or if your grandmother wouldn't recognize this food, your great-grandmother, don't eat it.
Exactly. And I think that's a big problem today is there's tons of information out there, but it's not easily digested. There's not easy ways of looking at things. And part of it is from a marketing perspective, well, just like what's going on with food dyes and things of that sort, people don't necessarily want you to know. But if you just take the approach of starting to look, take a first step. Start with looking at a label, just seeing what's in there, and then go from there. But the one thing I can actually share with you is if you go on a diet, okay, it's really difficult to stay on a specific diet. Okay, and the rules are easily broken, and there's a lot of frustration where you start coming down on yourself for not being able to stick to that. Some of the information and some of the research that I've done shows when you just make a concerted effort on a daily basis to make the little changes over time, those little changes, which are very rewarding and reinforcing, over time, those become major changes in your diet. And that's a critical component. We have to find ways of adapting to a dietary approach which is right for us, that isn't going to bring us down, which isn't going to cause anxiety, which isn't going to increase cortisol in our system, because then we've developed the dietary do loop. Try, fail, try, fail, try, fail. And you don't want to get into that do loop at all. So it's little steps over time that in all likelihood will bring you the most success.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at overcoming poor dietary habits. It's the little choice every day, and then you get the positive snowball effect instead of the negative one.
Exactly.
And also just like not getting super down on yourself if you slip up, or maybe you didn't make the best choice today, right? Just tomorrow's a new day, take a step forward again. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay.
Well, and you know what, there's obesity is a huge issue right now, and society is very judgmental, and that's a very difficult thing that people struggle with. Most of the advertising you see, it's very fit, trim, thin people, muscular, and all of this. So we live in a society where we're constantly bombarded with these images where we look at ourselves and say, I don't live up to this expectation, which again makes you feel bad about yourself. So that's why I really think it's important. Push the outside factors away, start dealing with yourself internally, and take those little steps. Let you be the judge, okay? Let you say, this was a good thing you did. I know you did this, but we'll do better tomorrow. That's how you have to approach it. Push out societal factors, and most importantly, just link it to your health. The longevity factor, and looking into the future, what do you want? That can be a powerful motivator. It can be a very powerful motivator.
Yes, I often find that what I want is to not be like the majority of my patient population.
Yeah.
Because I see what happens to people when they become metabolically unhealthy. I see the heart disease, I see the diabetes, I see the strokes, I see the autoimmune conditions, I see the cancer, and I see what it stems from. Right. There is probably nothing more important in your body if you're focusing on something than your metabolic health, because that is what leads to all disease. Metabolic health, inflammation, disease state. So I'm faced with the consequences of people's decisions daily. And that's not to say that people have no self-control and they're not making good choices. Unfortunately, it's kind of an uphill battle because of marketing, because of convenience, because of flavorings that are quite literally are addictive and change your brain chemistry, right? And so we're waging an uphill battle against the food industry and against our brain chemistry daily. But when you see what happens to people, it can scare you into wanting to do better. So I know the choices I need to make to be able to give myself health and longevity. And honestly, I have my animals to thank for that, because although I stared it in the face every single day at work for a decade, it wasn't until I looked at my animals' poor nutrition and what it was doing to them, made the switch to fresh food, and watched their lives transform in front of my eyes, that I was able to go, my God, Why am I not looking through this at the lens of for people too? I don't know what I just said. Why am I not applying this to people as well? Right? Because we're the same. We're mammals. We need a species appropriate diet. And junk food, shelf stable food, we're not getting it for ourselves. And it's the same thing for our pets. If you're pulling it off a shelf, be it kibble or potato chips, it's not species appropriate for you. And it will not lead to health and longevity. So if it weren't for them, I would never be in this place, and I would never be now applying this to my patients who are people.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, I don't think people are aware of the fact where kibble comes from. And it dates back to the 1860s in London, a gentleman named James Spratt, I think. And he used to watch the biscuits. They used to eat these old biscuits coming off. It was actually, I guess the patent was actually sold in the 90s or 60s to General Mills. That's how all this came about.
Yeah.
So
it eventually became Milkbone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I actually have a free webinar for anybody who wants to watch it. If you go to my website, rawpawadventures.com, and you click on services, but it's also on the main homepage, it's a free mini webinar. It's all about the evolution of kibble. And I talk about that dang James Spratt, who I think probably had good intentions at heart and didn't know what this was going to become.
The first commercial dog food. I mean, that was really it. But the interesting thing about that took place in the 1860s. But what we see going on now between pet parents and their pets is this whole humanization of food now. And what I mean by that is the sort of health and dietary trends that humans are experiencing are being translated into the pet food world as well. So you can look, I've looked at a few things where there's actually these correlations. For example, when organics first came into the pet food world, and what were the other ones? Grain-free. Remember the grain-free diet? Everybody was on the keto and this and that kind of diet, more protein, eliminating carbohydrates. Grain-free, that came into it. Limited ingredients, more whole foods. Right now, everything is whole foods. It came to the pet world as well. So the linkage between the human and pet food worlds are almost symbiotic now. And that's leading to more correlations between what we're eating, and what we're feeding our pets, like you actually experienced. So the link is there. And I will share this other thing. One of the easiest things that you can do to start getting into a healthier diet is eliminating fast food.
Yeah.
Just do not attend fast food places at all and start cooking at home. And that will do such a dramatic change to your diet in virtually every nutrient aspect. It's unbelievable.
Yep, I completely agree. And even if you can't make quite the leap from fast food, which is all the way over here, to home cooking, which is all the way over here, maybe meeting in the middle and going to like a Wegmans that's an East Coast thing, Safeway or Sprouts, or, a lot of these places have pre-cooked meals that are healthier than fast food, right? So you can get, a rotisserie chicken, or you can get some, pork with a vegetable on the side, and they have them in the warmers and they pre-package them. And that takes just as much time to park, run in, pay for it, and run out than sometimes it does sitting in a fast food line. So happy mediums, you can inch your way across the spectrum. You don't have to just dive in head first. And like you said, those little changes are the catalyst that can help bring you back to a healthier eating habit.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can't believe it's already been 50 minutes. I feel like I say that all the time, but this flew by so fast.
Oh my goodness. This was great fun. And I just love the fact that not only are we talking about diet and nutrition, we're linking it to pets and how we're all in this together, really.
Yes. Yep. I feel like I need to break out in High School Musical. We're all in this together.
I love
Nobody
that.
wants to hear my terrible singing.
No, my daughter played that so many times. We could do a duet on that, I think.
When we get off, we'll do a duet.
Okay.
That'll be the bonus video. Okay, how can people find you and find your products? And then you also mentioned a discount.
Yes.
For the Mind Pet Platter.
You can order us going to Mine, M-I-N-E, as we discussed, petplatter.com. And we're actually offering a discount. Put in the code Raw Paw in honor of you, Kara, and you'll get 10% off.
10% off. And I have all three of my colors are sitting here, right? I have my red, my yellow, and my blue. And if you have 3 dogs, it's perfect because there's 3 colors. But amazing. So yes, definitely check it out. It changed the way my animals eat. I see them eating healthier, and it's not just about what you're eating. It's about how you're eating. So give them healthy food and then put that healthy food on a more biologically appropriate way of eating.
I just want to say thank you, because you sharing this information, the fact that you do this and people can access this information is so incredibly meaningful to people. So thank you for your contribution.
You are welcome, and thank you for coming on.
That was great fun. Had a great time. See you later.
All right,
Thanks,
I'll see
Carol.
you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Please remember that you, yes, you, are the driving force that helps keep small businesses and platforms like mine running. So if you liked what you heard, please like, share, and most importantly, rate this podcast. It's the only way we can reach more people and spread the word about natural health. None of the conditions discussed or recommendations given are meant to replace the advice of your health provider. So if you have concerns about yourself or your pets, please confer with a human or animal health practitioner. Have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you next week.